Y'all, it's Trinity, and in today's video, we are going to be starting a new series about music theory for producers.
For today's topic, we're going to be talking about secondary dominant chords. Now, if you don't already somewhat have a decent understanding of basic music theory, like key signatures, natural numbers, Roman numerals, or just in general how chords are formed, this video might be a little tricky for you, but I still encourage you to stick around and see if you can learn something new.
In layman's terms, a secondary dominant is a dominant seventh chord that is not native to the key it's used in to resolve to a chord that isn't tonic. Now, I just said a lot of words, so if that went over your head, don't worry, we're gonna break it down. So for example, let's say we're in the key of A. In the key of A, E is the 5 chord, and that's where our dominant chord is. Or in other words, E is our dominant 7th chord. Partially because it's the 5 of the chord, but honestly, we don't need to get into all the nitty gritty. All you need to know is that in a typical, regular, major key, the 5 would be our 5/7 or our dominant chord. Let's say we're in the key of A, and this is our chord progression. We have E, C sharp 7, F sharp minor, and B. Just so you know what it sounds like, I'm gonna play it for you. Now, if you couldn't tell already, this is actually the chord progression for Dancing Queen by ABBA. One of my favorite songs, and I feel like this is a great song to really be able to hear what's actually happening. You may hear this chord progression and think, that's a little bit interesting. There's a C sharp 7. I thought we just established that the 7 chord, the dominant 7, falls on E. But in this chord progression, that's not the case. But why does this work? Why does it have a weird tension, but it still hits our ear in a nice way? Think about that. Well, that tension is coming from the C sharp 7 chord, as you probably guessed. But what is actually happening? I thought we just established that C sharp is the 3 minor in the key of A, and that E is the dominant 7th chord. So what the heck is going on down here? What's going on is we have a secondary dominant chord. But why does this work? Why is it that when this chord is actually within the progression though, it doesn't sound like it's not native to the key? It makes sense to our ear. Actually break down what's happening. Let's play the chord progression one more time. Now, if we look at our progression again, what is the chord that is preceding the C sharp 7? If we look, F sharp minor is the chord that is coming right after C sharp 7. And yes, this is significant. The chord that's following, the C sharp 7, the secondary dominant, really does matter for this argument. Let's hear the progression again, but just listen to the way that C sharp 7 moves to F sharp minor. Is it just me, or does it sound like F sharp minor is the resolution to C sharp 7? Isn't that a little weird? Because we're in the key of A, so shouldn't any type of dominant chord resolve to tonic? But in this case, no. That's why we use secondary dominants, is so that we can resolve to a chord that isn't tonic. Why is it that F sharp minor is the resolution to C sharp 7? Well, if we actually break down what we're doing with a secondary dominant, we are taking the dominant 7th chord from another key and pulling it into the key that we're in. So with our example, C sharp 7 is the dominant chord of F sharp minor. And before you get confused, even if this was an F sharp major chord, the C sharp 7 would still be used. But because we're in the key of A and F sharp is our 6th minor, we're going to resolve to the F sharp minor chord instead of major. But it would work in a different key even if we were using a major chord instead of a minor. And if it's still not really clicking to you, I'm going to write it in Roman numerals so that we can see how it would be written out. Okay, for the sake of this video not being too complicated, we're going to ignore the fact that the B is also major in this key. Technically, it's also another secondary dominant, but we don't got to worry about that. We're not going to worry about that. Let's focus on the C sharp 7 to F sharp minor. If we look at our Roman numerals, you'll see that we write it as a 5/7 borrowed from the 6 minor, moving to 6 minor. At the end of the day, in essence, all you're doing with a secondary dominant is borrowing a 5/7 so that you can resolve to something that isn't tonic, just like we said in our definition earlier. But hopefully it makes a little more sense now.
So if we look, we have a C sharp, an F, a G sharp, and a B. What we're going to do is we're going to take the third of the chord and raise it by a half step, which would make this F an F sharp, which is how we get our F sharp minor chord. But how would I know that it's minor and not just an F sharp chord? Now remember, we were in the key of A. And do we remember what F sharp is in the key of A? It's the 6th minor, which is how we would know that this is a minor chord and not a major. That would be wrong. So if we were trying to find out whether the 7 chord that was in the middle of our chord progression, key it's borrowed from, we would just take the third and we'd raise it by a half step.
I want to thank y'all so much for tuning into this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope it was helpful and you learned some different music theory knowledge. So if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like, subscribe, and comment down below if you want any more videos related to music theory. Even if we run it back and go into like key signatures and the circle of fifths, I would love to make a video talking about it. I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!